The Vampire King's hand closed around her throat before Fiona Mercer could even scream. And in the half-second, before she blacked out in that grimy nightclub bathroom, she saw eyes like molten silver staring into hers with such raw hunger that her body responded in ways she'd never felt before. She woke up in silk sheets. The room around her was impossibly beautiful, all dark wood and velvet curtains, candles burning in silver sconces that looked centuries old. Her heart hammered against her ribs as memory came flooding back. The club. Her friends daring her to talk to the impossibly beautiful man at the bar, his white hair falling over shoulders, clad in an expensive black suit. The way he'd looked at her like she was the only person in the entire world. The drink he'd bought her. The way his hand had felt against the small of her back as he'd led her away from the crowd. The bathroom. His fangs. Oh God, his fangs. You're awake. His voice came from the shadows, smooth as aged whiskey and twice as intoxicating. Good. I was beginning to worry I'd taken too much. Fiona scrambled upright, clutching the sheets to her chest, even though she was still fully clothed in last night's dress. The red fabric was rumpled now, stained with something dark near the collar, blood, her blood. He stepped into the candlelight, and her breath caught despite her terror. He was even more beautiful than she remembered, if that was possible. White hair cascaded past his shoulders, contrasting sharply with skin so pale it seemed to glow in the dim light. His features were sharp, aristocratic, almost cruel in their perfection. He wore different clothes now, something that looked like it belonged in a period drama, all black fabric and intricate silver embroidery. What did you do to me? Her voice came out shakier than she wanted. I fed. He said it so casually, like he was discussing the weather. And you enjoyed it, if I recall correctly, quite thoroughly. Heat flooded her face as fragmented memories surfaced, his mouth on her throat, the sharp pain that had somehow transformed into pleasure so intense she'd nearly collapsed, her hands tangling in that white hair, pulling him closer instead of pushing him away, the way she'd moaned his name. Alaric, she whispered, and his eyes flashed with something that might have been satisfaction. Orin, he corrected, moving closer to the bed with the fluid grace of a predator. Orin Castellan. Alaric was the name I gave you for the surface world. Down here, in my domain, I have no need for such pretenses. Down here? Fiona's eyes darted to the windows, but the curtains were too thick to see through. Where am I? Safe. He reached out and traced one long finger down her cheek, and she hated how her body trembled at the contact. You're in my private chambers, 300 feet beneath the streets of New York. Welcome to the court of endless night, little human. You've stumbled into a world you weren't supposed to know existed. The weight of those words settled over her like a lead blanket. You're going to kill me. No. His thumb brushed across her lower lip, and his eyes followed the movement with unsettling intensity. Though perhaps that would be kinder. You tasted like summer rain and wild honey, Fiona Mercer. 500 years I've walked this earth, and I've never encountered blood quite like yours. It sang to me, called to something I thought had died centuries ago. I don't understand. Neither do I. For the first time, something like confusion crossed his perfect features. You should mean nothing to me. A moment's pleasure, a meal, nothing more. I've had thousands like you over the centuries. But your taste, your scent, the way you responded to me. He pulled back sharply, as if burned. I need to understand what you are, what makes you different. Fear spiked through her chest. I'm just a college student. I work at a coffee shop. There's nothing special about me. You're 23 years old, studying art history at NYU, and you have a small scar on your left knee from falling off your bike when you were 7. His silver eyes bore into hers. You're afraid of thunderstorms, but you love the rain. You take your coffee black with exactly 1 sugar. You dream of traveling to Italy someday. Shall I continue? I know everything about you, Fiona. I've known since the moment I tasted your blood. It's a gift of my lineage, 1 drop, and I can read a human's entire history. He turned away from her, his shoulders tense beneath that ornate jacket. What I don't understand is why I care. The raw honesty in those words shocked her into silence. She watched him move to the window, pulling back the curtain just enough to reveal not glass, but solid stone. They really were underground. I should compel you to forget, he said quietly. Wipe your memory of this night and return you to your mundane little life. It's what I do with all my encounters. It's safer for everyone involved. Then why haven't you? He was silent for so long, she thought he wouldn't answer. When he finally turned back to face her, his expression was carefully neutral. Because I'm curious, and curiosity is a rare thing when you've lived as long as I have. So I'm what? An experiment? You're a puzzle. He moved back toward the bed with that predatory grace that made her pulse quicken. And I intend to solve you. Then, perhaps I can move on with my existence and forget this inconvenient fascination. I want to go home. Not yet. His hand shot out and gripped her chin, forcing her to meet his gaze. You came to me willingly last night, Fiona. You let me touch you, taste you, take you to heights of pleasure you didn't know existed. Don't pretend now that you were an unwilling victim. She wanted to deny it, but the words stuck in her throat. Because he was right. She'd wanted him with an intensity that had terrified and thrilled her in equal measure. Even now, with fear coursing through her veins, part of her wanted to lean into his touch, to feel that dark pleasure again. That's not fair, she whispered. You did something to me, some kind of vampire mind control. Vampires can't compel during feeding, only before or after. His thumb stroked along her jaw. What you felt was real, pure chemical attraction amplified by the intimacy of the act. Nothing more, nothing less. Let me go. 3 days. He released her and stepped back. Give me 3 days to understand this anomaly. Then I'll return you to your life with no memory of any of this. You have my word. The word of a vampire. She couldn't keep the bitterness from her voice. Something dark flickered across his face. The word of a king. I don't give it lightly. Before she could respond, a knock sounded at the door. Orin's expression shifted to annoyance. Enter! The door opened to reveal another vampire. This one with white hair cropped short and eyes like chips of ice. She was female, beautiful in the same terrifying way Orin was, dressed in a gown that looked like it cost more than Fiona's entire tuition. My king. She bowed slightly, but her eyes locked onto Fiona with undisguised curiosity. The council requests your presence. There's been another incursion at the eastern border. Tell them I'll attend shortly. They were quite insistent. I said shortly, Elise. The command in his voice made the other vampire flinch. Or do you question your king? Never, my lord. Elise bowed again, deeper this time, and retreated from the room. Fiona watched the exchange with growing dread. King. They kept calling him king. What exactly had she gotten herself into? Orin turned back to her, and for just a moment she saw something like regret in his eyes. I have duties to attend to. You'll remain here until I return. The door's locked, and even if you could escape this room, you'd never make it out of the court alive. My subjects are not as controlled as I am when it comes to human blood. You can't keep me prisoner. I can, and I will, for your own safety as much as my curiosity. He moved to the door, then paused. There's a bathroom through that door, and you'll find clothes in the wardrobe that should fit. Food will be brought to you. Try not to do anything foolish. Then he was gone, and Fiona was alone in a vampire king's bedroom 300 feet underground. She waited exactly 5 minutes before she started trying to escape. The door was indeed locked, solid wood that wouldn't budge no matter how hard she threw herself against it. The windows were useless, just stone behind the curtains. She searched the room frantically, looking for anything that could be used as a weapon or a tool, but everything was either too heavy to lift or too ornate to be practical. Finally, exhausted and terrified, she sank onto the bed and let herself cry. She thought about her roommate, who was probably frantic with worry by now, about her classes that she'd miss, about her job at the coffee shop where she was supposed to work the morning shift, about her completely normal, boring life that she'd taken for granted until a vampire king had decided she was interesting. She must have dozed off eventually, because when she woke, there was a tray of food on the bedside table. Human food, she was relieved to see. Fruit and cheese and fresh bread, along with a glass of what smelled like wine. Her stomach growled despite everything, and she ate mechanically, trying not to think about how the food had gotten there or who had brought it. Hours passed. She showered in the attached bathroom, which was as luxurious as the bedroom, all marble and gold fixtures. She found clothes in the wardrobe as he'd promised, strange garments that looked like they belonged in a different era, but also some more modern pieces. She chose jeans and a soft sweater, needing the comfort of familiar clothing. She was sitting on the bed trying to formulate some kind of plan when the door opened again. But it wasn't Orin who entered. The vampire who stepped inside was male, with the same white hair and pale skin as all the others, but his eyes were different. Where Orin's were silver, this one's were almost black, and they fixed on her with an intensity that made her skin crawl. "So you're the human that has our king so distracted." He closed the door behind him, and Fiona heard the lock click. "I must say, I don't see the appeal. You smell pleasant enough, but hardly worth breaking centuries of protocol." "Who are you?" Fiona pressed herself against the headboard, wishing desperately for a weapon. "My name is Severin, and I'm a member of the King's Council." He moved closer, inhaling deeply. "Though I wonder how long I'll remain in his favor once I tell him I couldn't resist sampling his new pet." Terror shot through her. "He'll kill you." "Perhaps, but you smell divine, little human. Worth the risk, I think." His fangs descended and he lunged. Fiona screamed. The door exploded inward, wood splintering like it was made of paper. Orin stood in the doorway, and the rage on his face was beyond anything Fiona had ever seen. He moved faster than her eyes could follow, and suddenly Severin was pinned against the wall, Orin's hand around his throat. "You dare!" The words came out barely above a whisper, but they carried more menace than any shout. "You dare enter my chambers and threaten what is mine." "She's just a human," Severin choked out. "Not worth—" Orin's other hand came up and there was a sickening crack. Severin's head rolled at an unnatural angle, and when Orin released him, the body crumpled to the floor and began to turn to ash. Fiona stared in horror as the vampire who'd been about to kill her disintegrated into nothing. Orin turned to her and she flinched, but his touch when he reached for her was surprisingly gentle. "Did he hurt you?" She shook her head, unable to find words. "I should have posted a guard." His hands moved over her, checking for injuries with a care that seemed at odds with the violence he'd just displayed. "I underestimated how tempting your scent would be to the others. That was foolish of me." "You killed him." Her voice came out small, shaking. "I did. No remorse in those words. And I'll kill anyone else who tries to touch you. You're under my protection now, Fiona. That means something in this world." "I want to go home." The words came out as a sob. For a moment, something like pain crossed his features. Then he pulled her against his chest, and despite everything, she found herself clinging to him. He was cold, his body temperature far below human normal, but his arms around her felt safe, secure. "2 more days," he murmured into her hair. "Give me 2 more days to understand this, and then I'll let you go, I swear it." She wanted to argue, to demand her immediate release, but exhaustion and shock were pulling her under. Against all logic, she felt safe in his arms, protected, even though he was the danger she needed protection from. "Why do you care?" she whispered. "You said I should mean nothing to you." "You should." His hand stroked down her back in soothing circles. "But apparently, I'm not as immune to inexplicable fascination as I thought. Sleep now. I'll stay with you this time. No one else will dare enter." And despite everything, despite the dead vampire dissolving into ash on the floor and the underground prison she was trapped in and the impossibility of her situation, Fiona felt her eyes drifting closed. She woke to find herself curled against something cold and solid. Her eyes flew open to discover she'd fallen asleep against Orin's chest, his arms still wrapped around her. He was leaning against the headboard, his eyes closed, but she could tell he wasn't truly sleeping. Vampires didn't sleep the way humans did, she remembered reading somewhere once, back when vampires were just myths. Your heart rate increased. His eyes opened, those silver orbs fixing on her. Bad dream? More like bad reality. A slight curve of his lips that might have been a smile. Fair enough. She should pull away from him, should put distance between herself and this creature who'd kidnapped her and killed someone right in front of her. But his arms felt good around her, solid and secure, and she was so tired of being afraid. "Tell me about you," she found herself saying. "If I'm stuck here for 2 more days, I might as well understand who's holding me captive." He was quiet for a long moment. "What do you want to know?" "How old are you really?" 543 years. I was turned in 1483, during the reign of Richard III of England. I was a nobleman's son, arrogant and stupid and convinced of my own immortality. His fingers traced absent patterns on her shoulder. I was proven wrong on that last count rather dramatically. What happened? I challenged the wrong man to a duel over a woman whose name I can't even remember now. He turned out to be an ancient vampire who decided death was too kind a punishment, so he made me into this instead. No bitterness in his voice, just statement of fact. I hated him for it, for the first 100 years or so. Then I killed him and took his place as king of the North American covens. You've been king for over 400 years? Someone has to maintain order among our kind. Might as well be someone with the power to enforce it. He shifted slightly, adjusting her weight against him. We're not mindless monsters, despite what your stories say. We have laws, hierarchies, codes of honor. Without them, we'd tear each other and your kind apart in a matter of decades. But you still kill humans. We feed on humans. There's a difference. His hand stilled on her shoulder. I won't lie to you and pretend we're benevolent creatures. We're predators. But most of us prefer willing donors, blood banks, criminals who won't be missed. The old ways, where we simply took what we wanted without care for the consequences, those are dying out. I've made sure of it. Why? Because unchecked slaughter draws attention, and attention leads to discovery, and discovery leads to war. I've seen what happens when humans realize we exist. The burnings, the stakings, the wholesale slaughter of both our kinds. His voice went hard. I won't let it happen again. So yes, we feed. But we do it carefully, discreetly, and with as little harm as possible. Fiona absorbed this, trying to reconcile it with everything she'd thought she knew about vampires. Is that why you were at the club? Hunting for donors? I was there because I'm bored out of my mind after 5 centuries of existence, and occasionally I enjoy reminding myself what it's like to move among your kind undetected. He looked down at her, something unreadable in his eyes. I wasn't hunting. Not until I caught your scent. What is it about my blood that's so special? If I knew that, you'd already be home. Frustration colored his words. I've had our best scholars examining the sample I took. They can't find anything unusual in its composition. You're not a witch, not descended from any supernatural line we're aware of, not carrying any genetic markers that would explain the reaction. By all accounts, you're completely, utterly human. Then maybe it's not about what I am. Maybe it's about you. He went very still. Explain. You said you've lived for 500 years, that you're bored. Maybe I tasted different because you wanted to taste something different. Maybe it's psychological, not biological. Vampires don't work that way. Are you sure? How many 500-year-old vampires have you studied? She pushed herself up to look at him properly. You're the king. The most powerful vampire in North America, from what you've said. Maybe you're different. Maybe you've evolved beyond what normal vampires experience. He stared at her for a long moment, then suddenly laughed. It was a rusty sound, like something that didn't get used often. 5 hours in my world and you're already theorizing about vampire psychology. You're either very brave or very foolish. Probably both. She managed a weak smile. My mom always said my curiosity would get me killed someday. Guess she was more right than she knew. His hand came up to cup her face, thumb brushing across her cheek. I won't let that happen. Whatever this is between us, whatever strange fascination has taken hold, I won't let you die because of it. You say that like you have a choice. I'm the vampire king, Fiona. I always have a choice. His eyes held hers, intense and burning. And I choose to protect you, even from myself, if necessary. The sincerity in his words made her chest ache. This was insane. She shouldn't be feeling anything for this creature except fear. But looking into those silver eyes, feeling the gentle way he touched her despite his obvious deadly strength, she couldn't help but wonder if maybe, just maybe, there was something more to Orin Castellan than fangs and violence. I need to contact my roommate, she said quietly. She'll be worried. She'll have filed a missing person report by now. Orin nodded slowly. I'll have one of my people send her a message from your phone, something about a spontaneous trip, A few days away. Will she believe it? Maybe. If we include some details only I would know. Tell me what to say. They spent the next hour crafting a message convincing enough to buy a few more days. Orin was surprisingly patient about it, listening to her explanations about her friendship with her roommate, about the little jokes and references that would make the message authentic. He asked questions, drew out details about her life, and despite the bizarre circumstances, Fiona found herself talking more freely than she'd expected. "You love your life," he observed after she'd finished explaining her coffee shop job. "Your mundane, ordinary human life. You're happy." "I was," she corrected, "before a vampire king decided to kidnap me." "I'm not." He stopped, then sighed. "Yes, I suppose I'm kidnapping you, though it's for your own good." "Isn't that what all kidnappers say?" Another rusty laugh. "Probably, though most kidnappers don't have to worry about their victim being drained dry by members of their own court." He had a point there. "How many vampires are down here?" In the full extent of the Court of Endless Night, nearly 3,000. At her shocked expression, he nodded. "We're the largest organized coven in the world. Vampires come from across the globe to pledge themselves to my rule, because I offer something most vampire societies don't: structure, protection, and rules that prevent the kind of chaos that leads to extinction." 3,000 vampires living under New York City. That's insane. We have similar courts under London, Tokyo, Sao Paulo, and Moscow. Smaller covens in nearly every major city. We've learned to integrate ourselves into human society, to build our world in the shadows of yours. He stood, setting her gently aside. "I need to attend to my duties. Will you be all right alone for a few hours? I'll post guards at the door, loyal ones who won't dare disobey my orders." "Do I have a choice?" "Not really." But there was something apologetic in his expression. "I'll have food sent up. And books if you'd like. You mentioned studying art history. I have a collection that might interest you." "Stolen from murdered victims?" His jaw tightened. "Collected over 5 centuries of existence, mostly through legitimate purchase. Though yes, some pieces came from less savory circumstances. We're monsters, Fiona. I won't pretend otherwise. But we're not mindless killers." After he left, Fiona found herself pacing the room restlessly. The guards he'd posted were silent presences outside the door. She'd heard them take up position with soft footsteps and murmured acknowledgments. Knowing they were there should have made her feel more trapped, but instead she felt oddly safe. True to his word, food arrived shortly after, along with a stack of books that made her breath catch. First editions, some of them. Texts on Renaissance art that belonged in museums. She settled onto the bed and began to read, losing herself in familiar subject matter, even as her mind kept circling back to the impossibility of her situation. She was falling for him. That was the terrifying truth she could no longer deny. Orin Castellan, vampire king, creature of darkness, literal predator, and she was developing feelings for him. The way he touched her so carefully despite his strength, the raw honesty in his words, the centuries of loneliness she could see behind those silver eyes. It was stupid and reckless and probably going to get her killed, but she couldn't seem to help it. When he returned hours later, she was still reading. He paused in the doorway, taking in the sight of her surrounded by books, and something soft crossed his features. "You're beautiful like this," he said quietly. "Lost in learning. Your kind's thirst for knowledge is one of the things I've always admired. As opposed to your kind's thirst for blood? We hunger for knowledge too. I've spent centuries studying, learning, trying to understand this world and my place in it." He moved to sit beside her on the bed. "The books help? They help me feel normal, like I'm still me, not just some puzzle for you to solve. You're much more than a puzzle, Fiona." His hand found hers, cold fingers intertwining with her warm ones. "I'm beginning to realize that." "What do you mean?" He was quiet for a long moment, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. "I had my scholars test something today. A theory, based on what you said earlier." "What kind of theory?" "They gave me blood from other donors, 10 different humans, all with different genetic markers, blood types, backgrounds. I tasted each one. His silver eyes met hers. They were all the same. Adequate nutrition, nothing more. No different than they've ever been." Fiona's heart began to pound. So it's not your blood that's special. It's you. Something about you specifically that calls to me in a way nothing has in 500 years. His hand tightened on hers. I don't understand it. I don't know how to quantify or explain it, but I can't deny it anymore. Maybe you don't need to understand it. The words came out barely above a whisper. Maybe some things just are. I'm a vampire king. I've built an empire on understanding, on control, on never acting without knowing all the variables. Frustration bled into his voice. This feeling, this pull toward you, it's chaos, it's dangerous, it goes against everything I've learned in 5 centuries. And yet you feel it anyway. Yes. The admission seemed torn from him. God help me, yes. Fiona turned to face him fully, her heart racing. I feel it too. I don't want to. I know I shouldn't, but I do. Even knowing what you are, what you've done, I can't stop thinking about you, about the way you make me feel. His eyes darkened, pupils dilating. Don't say things like that. Why not? It's the truth. Because I'm barely holding on to my control as it is. His hand came up to cup her face, and she could feel the tremor in his fingers. Because every instinct I have is screaming at me to claim you, to mark you as mine, to never let you leave this room. And that's not fair to you. You deserve your freedom, your normal life, your human future. What if I don't want that anymore? You don't know what you're saying. Don't I? She leaned into his touch. You've shown me a world I never knew existed. You've protected me, been honest with me, treated me with more respect and care than most human men I've dated. Yes, you're a vampire. Yes, this is insane. But that doesn't make the feelings any less real. Fiona. She kissed him. It was reckless and stupid and probably the worst decision she'd ever made, but she couldn't stop herself. His lips were cold against hers, but they softened immediately, and then he was kissing her back with a desperation that made her head spin. His hand tangled in her hair, holding her close but never forcing, always giving her the option to pull away. She didn't pull away. The kiss deepened, and she tasted something dark and intoxicating on his tongue. Not blood, just him, just Orin, and it was more addictive than anything she'd ever experienced. His other hand found her waist, pulling her closer, and she went willingly, climbing into his lap and wrapping her arms around his neck. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, well, she was breathing hard. He didn't seem to need air. He rested his forehead against hers. This is a terrible idea, he murmured. Probably. I'm offering you freedom. 2 days and you can go back to your life. I know. So why are you here in my arms, kissing me like you never want to stop? She pulled back just enough to meet his eyes. Because maybe I don't want to stop. Maybe freedom isn't what I'm looking for anymore. Something fierce and possessive flashed across his face. You don't know what you're asking for. Then show me, he groaned, a sound of pure frustration and desire. You're going to be the death of me, Fiona Mercer, and I'm already dead. But he kissed her again, and this time there was no hesitation in it. He kissed her like a man drowning, and she was air, like she was the only thing in the world that mattered. His hands roamed her body with careful reverence, always checking for permission, always making sure she wanted this as much as he did. She wanted it more than she'd ever wanted anything. They fell back onto the bed together, a tangle of limbs and desperate touches. He was careful with his strength, she could tell, always aware of how easily he could hurt her. But there was nothing gentle about the desire between them, the raw need that had been building since that first night in the club. When his fangs grazed her throat, she arched into the touch instead of away. Are you sure? His voice was rough, barely controlled. Once I taste you again, I don't know if I can stop at just feeding. I'll want all of you, Fiona. Every part of you. Then take it. She tilted her head, offering her throat. Take me. I'm yours. The sound he made was almost inhuman, and then his fangs sank into her skin, and pleasure exploded through her body. It was better than she remembered, more intense, like every nerve ending was firing at once. His hands held her close as he drank, and she felt the bond between them strengthen, deepen, become something more than physical. When he pulled back, his eyes were molten silver, his lips stained with her blood. Mine, he breathed against her skin. You're mine now, Fiona. I'll never let you go. Good, she whispered back, because I don't want to leave. They made love as the candles burned low, and Fiona discovered that being claimed by a vampire king was the most terrifying, exhilarating, perfect thing she'd ever experienced. Afterward, she lay curled against his chest, his arms wrapped protectively around her. She should feel trapped, she thought distantly, should be planning her escape, should be horrified by what she'd just done. Instead, she felt safe, complete, like she'd found something she hadn't even known she was looking for. "What happens now?" she asked quietly. Orin's hand stroked through her hair. "Now things get complicated. The moment word spreads that I've taken a human consort, there will be challenges. Other vampires who see you as a weakness to exploit, factions who disagree with breaking the old traditions." His arm tightened around her. "I can protect you from most threats, but there are ancient powers even I can't fully control." "You're saying I'm in danger?" "You've been in danger since the moment I tasted you. This just makes it official." He shifted to look at her, his expression serious. "I'm giving you one more chance, Fiona. I can still compel you to forget, send you home to your normal life. You'll never remember me, never know any of this existed. You'll be safe. Or you stay with me. Accept the bond we've formed. Let me protect you, claim you publicly as mine. It won't be easy. You'll be living in a world of monsters, surrounded by creatures who see you as prey. You'll give up your human life, your friends, your dreams of normalcy. But I'll have you. Yes, simple, direct. You'll have me, for as long as you want me." Fiona thought about her coffee shop job, her classes, her small apartment and normal life. She thought about her dreams of traveling, of teaching art history someday, of finding a nice normal guy and settling down. Then, she thought about never seeing Orin again, never feeling his arms around her, never experiencing the intensity of his presence, never exploring this strange new world he'd shown her. It wasn't really a choice at all. "I want to stay." He closed his eyes, something like relief washing over his features. "Are you certain? Once you make this choice, there's no going back. The bond between us will deepen. Eventually, you'll have to choose between mortality and immortality, between your human life and mine." "I know." She reached up to touch his face, marveling at the smoothness of his skin. "I know it's crazy. I know I barely know you, know that every logical part of my brain is screaming that this is a mistake. But I feel something with you that I've never felt before, and I'm not ready to give that up." "Then you won't have to." He captured her hand, pressing a kiss to her palm. "You're mine now, Fiona, and I protect what's mine with everything I am." She fell asleep in his arms, feeling safer than she had any right to, given that she was cuddled up with a 500-year-old vampire king. When she woke the next morning, or what she assumed was morning, given that there were no windows to judge by, Orin was still there, watching her with those intense silver eyes. "Do you ever sleep?" she asked, her voice rough with drowsiness. "Not in the way you do. I rest occasionally. But true sleep is something I lost when I turned." His finger traced down her cheek. "I'd rather watch you anyway. You're fascinating when you sleep, so peaceful, so vulnerable. It makes me want to destroy anything that might threaten that peace. That's slightly creepy, you know. I'm a vampire. Creepy comes with the territory." But there was amusement in his voice. "How do you feel?" She did a mental inventory. Her neck was sore where he'd bitten her, but it was a pleasant ache. The rest of her body felt warm, satisfied, better than she'd felt in years. "Good. Really good, actually. The feeding bond can have that effect. My blood is in your system now, healing you, strengthening you. You'll find yourself faster, stronger, more resilient than before. Not anywhere near vampire level, but enhanced beyond normal human capabilities. You gave me your blood? Just a few drops mixed with my saliva when I bit you. It's automatic during intimate feeding. A survival mechanism that ensures the donor can withstand multiple feedings without dying." He brushed her hair back from her face. "You're bound to me now in ways most humans never experience. You'll be able to sense my emotions to some degree, feel when I'm near, and I'll be even more aware of you than before. Is that why I can feel this strange warmth in my chest, like there's a fire burning, but it doesn't hurt? That's our bond. As long as you carry my blood, you'll feel it. It will fade after a few weeks if we don't reinforce it." His eyes held hers. "Do you want it to fade?" "No." The answer was immediate, instinctive. "No, I want this, whatever this is." Satisfaction flickered across his features. "Good. Because we have a busy day ahead of us." "Doing what?" "Presenting you to my court." Fear spiked through her. "Is that safe?" "No." He said it baldly, without cushioning the truth. "But it's necessary. The rumors are already spreading. Better to address them head-on than let speculation run wild." He stood, moving to the wardrobe. "I'll have appropriate clothing brought for you. The court has protocols, formal dress requirements. You'll need to look the part." "What part is that exactly?" "The Vampire King's consort." He pulled out a dress that looked like it belonged in a museum, all dark velvet and intricate beading. "They'll expect you to be weak, frightened, easily dismissed. I need you to be strong, confident, to show them that you're worthy of the position you've claimed. I'm a college student who works at a coffee shop. I'm not exactly court material." He turned to face her, his expression fierce. "You're mine. That makes you more powerful than any vampire in that room except me. As long as you believe it, they'll have no choice but to accept it." It should have been impossible, ridiculous, but the conviction in his voice made her believe just a little that maybe she could pull this off. The next few hours were a whirlwind of preparation. A team of vampire servants, because apparently Vampire Kings had servants, came to help her dress and prepare. They were eerily silent, their white hair and pale skin making them all look like variations of the same person, and they handled her with a careful detachment that made her feel more like a doll than a person. The dress was heavy, the fabric weighing her down in ways that made her movements deliberate, measured. The bodice was tight, pushing her breasts up and her waist in, and the skirts fell in layers of midnight velvet that pooled around her feet. They styled her hair in an elaborate updo, wove dark jewels through the strands, and painted her face with subtle makeup that made her eyes look huge and her skin luminous. When they finally showed her the mirror, she barely recognized herself. "You look like a queen," one of the servants murmured, and there was something like approval in her voice. Orin's reaction when he saw her was worth all the discomfort. He went utterly still, his eyes darkening to almost black as they roamed over her. "You're breathtaking," he said, his voice rough. "Every vampire in that room is going to want you, and I'm going to have to fight the urge to kill them all for looking." "Possessive much?" "You have no idea." He crossed to her, offering his arm. "Ready to meet your new world?" "Not even a little bit." "Perfect. The best rulers are always terrified on the inside. It keeps you sharp." He led her toward the door, then paused. "One more thing. Whatever happens in that room, don't show fear. Don't back down. You're under my protection, and as long as you project confidence, no one will dare challenge you directly. And if they do challenge me, then I'll paint the walls with their blood." Said so casually, like he was discussing the weather. "But I'd prefer it not come to that. Dead council members are tedious to replace." The court of endless night was nothing like she'd imagined. The chamber they entered was vast, easily the size of a cathedral, carved from living rock and lit by thousands of candles. The ceiling arched overhead, lost in shadows, and the walls were decorated with tapestries that looked centuries old. At the far end of the room sat a throne of black stone, and arranged around it in a semicircle were dozens of other vampires, all dressed in elaborate formal wear, all watching her with hungry, curious eyes. Fiona's hand tightened on Orin's arm, and she felt a pulse of reassurance through their bond. "I've got you," he murmured. "Just breathe and follow my lead." They walked down the center of the room, and the whispers started immediately. She could hear them even over the click of her heels on stone, could feel the weight of all those predatory gazes. Human. The king's new pet. She won't last a week. Orin's expression never changed, but she felt his anger through their bond, a cold fury that made her shiver. He led her to the throne and took his seat, then pulled her down onto his lap in a gesture that was both protective and possessive. The whispers grew louder. Silence. One word, spoken softly, but it cut through the room like a blade. Every vampire went quiet instantly. "You're here because I've summoned you to witness an announcement. This human, Fiona Mercer, is now under my protection as my chosen consort, Any harm that comes to her will be answered with permanent death. Any insult will be met with exile. Any challenge to her position will be considered a challenge to me personally. A vampire near the front stepped forward, the same one who'd brought the message earlier. Elise. My king, with all respect. This is unprecedented. No vampire ruler has taken a human consort in over 300 years. The old laws are mine to interpret and enforce as I see fit. Orin's voice was cold. Or have you forgotten who sits this throne? Elise bowed immediately. Never, my lord. I merely seek to understand your reasoning. This human, what makes her worthy of such protection? She's mine. That's all the reason required. Another vampire, this one male with eyes like chips of amber, spoke up. And when she grows old and dies, as all humans do, what then? Will the king be weakened by grief, vulnerable to challenges? Orin's hand found Fiona's, squeezing gently. When and if that time comes, it's my concern alone. Until then, she will be afforded every courtesy and protection due to my consort. Are we clear? Crystal, my lord. But the amber-eyed vampire didn't look convinced. Though I wonder if the human understands what she's agreed to, living in our world, surrounded by creatures who hunger for her blood. It's a death sentence, really. Just slower than usual. I understand perfectly. Fiona's voice rang out before she could second-guess the wisdom of speaking. Every eye in the room fixed on her, and she fought the urge to shrink back. I know what he is, what you all are, and I've chosen to be here anyway. Brave or stupid, Amber Eyes mused. Time will tell, I suppose. Enough. Orin stood, bringing Fiona with him and setting her carefully on her feet. The announcement is made. You're dismissed. And remember, anyone who touches her answers to me. The vampires began to file out, though Fiona could feel their eyes on her the whole time. When the room was finally empty except for her and Orin, she let out a shaky breath. That was terrifying. You did well. He pulled her close, pressing a kiss to her forehead. Better than well. You held your ground, spoke with confidence. They won't dismiss you easily now. But they'll test me. Constantly. It's the vampire way. His arms tightened around her. But I meant what I said. Anyone who harms you dies. I'll burn this entire court to the ground before I let them take you from me. The vehemence in his words should have scared her. Instead, it made her feel cherished, protected, valued in a way she'd never experienced. I love you. The words slipped out before she could stop them. I know it's too soon. I know it's crazy, but I do. I love you. He went very still. For a moment she thought she'd made a terrible mistake. Then his hand came up to cup her face and his eyes were blazing with emotion. I've lived for 500 years, he said quietly. I've experienced every pleasure, every pain, every possible variation of existence, and in all that time, I've never felt anything close to what I feel for you. He kissed her, soft and sweet and desperate all at once. I love you, Fiona Mercer. I loved you from the moment I tasted your blood, even though I didn't understand it. And I'll love you until the stars burn out and the world ends. She kissed him back, pouring everything she felt into the gesture. This was insane, impossible, a human and a vampire king, but it was also real and right and more perfect than anything she'd ever imagined. When they finally broke apart, Orin rested his forehead against hers. I need to ask you something, and I need you to think carefully before you answer. What is it? Do you want to be turned? The question hung in the air between them. Fiona's heart stuttered. Into a vampire. Into my vampire, my equal, my mate, my partner for eternity. His silver eyes held hers. I told you that eventually you'd have to choose between mortality and immortality. I'm giving you that choice now. Not because I need an answer immediately, but because I want you to start thinking about it. Really thinking about it. What would it mean? What would I lose? Your humanity. Your ability to walk in sunlight. Your heartbeat, your warmth, the way your blood sings through your veins. He was brutally honest. You'd become a predator, need to feed on blood to survive, live forever while everyone you've ever known ages and dies. It's not a gift, Fiona. It's a curse wrapped in eternal life. But I'd have you. Yes? His thumb traced her lips. You'd have me. Forever, if you wanted. We'd be bound in ways that go beyond what we have now. True mates, partners in every sense. I'd never have to watch you age and die, never have to face eternity without you. How much time do I have to decide? As much as you need. Years if you want them. I'm not going anywhere, and neither are you. He pulled her close. But I want you to understand the full scope of what being with me means, the good and the terrible. You deserve to make an informed choice. Fiona nodded slowly, her mind spinning. Immortality. Living forever as a vampire. It should have been an easy no, should have been obviously too much to ask. But the thought of growing old while Orin stayed forever young, of leaving him alone again after he'd finally found someone he loved, that hurt more than she'd expected. Can I think about it? Of course. He kissed her forehead. Take all the time you need, my love. I'll be here regardless of what you decide. The next few weeks fell into a strange routine. Fiona spent her days learning about vampire society, tutored by scholars and historians who taught her the complex hierarchies and protocols of the supernatural world. She learned about the different vampire bloodlines, each with their own powers and weaknesses. She learned the laws that governed their kind, rules that had been in place for millennia. She learned how to move through the court without drawing unwanted attention, how to project confidence even when she was terrified. Nights were for Orin. He'd return from his duties as king, and they'd spend hours talking, making love, simply existing together in the quiet moments between his responsibilities. He told her stories of his long life, the places he'd seen, the things he'd witnessed. She told him about her dreams, her fears, her hopes for whatever future they might have together. And slowly, gradually, she fell deeper in love with the vampire king. But danger was never far away. The court might have accepted her presence, but that didn't mean they accepted her. She caught vampires watching her with hungry eyes, heard whispered conversations that stopped when she entered a room, felt the constant undercurrent of resentment from those who saw her as an interloper, a weak human playing at being something she wasn't. Orin never let her out of his sight when she was in the public areas of the court. His protection was absolute, his possessiveness evident to anyone who looked. And gradually, grudgingly, the other vampires began to give her a measure of respect. Then, 5 weeks after she'd first woken in Orin's chambers, everything changed. She was in the library, surrounded by ancient texts about vampire history, when the attack came. One moment she was alone, peacefully reading. The next, 3 vampires she'd never seen before materialized from the shadows. "The king's little pet," one of them hissed. "All alone. How convenient." Fiona's blood went cold. She reached for the bond with Orin, screaming mentally for help, but one of the vampires was faster. He grabbed her arm, his grip like iron, and suddenly her head went fuzzy. Magic. They were using magic to cloud her thoughts, to block the bond. "We're going to send your lover a message," another vampire said, and his fangs descended. "Nothing personal, human, just, politics." She tried to scream, but the sound wouldn't come, tried to fight, but her enhanced strength was nothing compared to theirs. They were going to kill her, she realized with crystal clarity, going to drain her dry and leave her body for Orin to find. Then the door exploded off its hinges. Orin stood in the doorway, and the rage on his face was beyond anything she'd ever seen. His eyes had gone completely black, his fangs fully extended, and the temperature in the room dropped so rapidly that frost formed on the stone walls. "You dare!" His voice was barely recognizable, something ancient and terrible. "You dare touch what is mine?" The vampires released her immediately, backing away with fear written across their faces. But it was too late. Orin moved faster than thought, and suddenly he had one of them by the throat. "Please!" the vampire choked out. "We were hired, told to send a message." "The only message being sent tonight is written in your blood." Orin's hand tightened, and the vampire's head came clean off. The body disintegrated to ash before it hit the ground. The other 2 tried to run. They didn't make it 3 steps. Fiona watched in horror and awe as Orin destroyed them both with brutal efficiency. No hesitation, no mercy, just pure lethal violence. When it was done, 3 piles of ash were all that remained of her attackers. Orin turned to her, and slowly the blackness faded from his eyes. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head, unable to find words. He crossed to her and pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. "I'm sorry. I should have been here, should have protected you better." "It's not your fault." Her voice was shaking. "They used magic, blocked our bond. Someone hired them." His voice was cold, controlled rage. "Someone in my own court orchestrated this attack, and when I find out who, they'll pray for the mercy of death." He carried her back to his chambers, dismissing the guards with a single look. Once inside, he set her carefully on the bed and began checking her for injuries with methodical thoroughness. "I'm okay," she said softly. "Scared, but okay. You shouldn't be in danger here. This is supposed to be the safest place for you." His hands were shaking slightly as they moved over her. "I've failed you." "No, you haven't." She caught his hands, forcing him to look at her. "You saved me. You'll always save me. I know that." "I nearly lost you." The raw pain in his voice made her chest ache. "If I'd been even a minute slower." "But you weren't. I'm here. I'm safe." She pulled him down beside her. "We're okay." He held her close, his face buried in her hair. For the first time since she'd met him, he seemed almost vulnerable. This ancient, powerful vampire king, undone by the thought of losing her. "I need to find who ordered this," he said finally. "Need to root out the conspiracy before they try again." "Then do it." She pulled back to meet his eyes. "Do what you need to do. I trust you." Over the next week, Orin launched a full investigation into the attack. Vampires were questioned, loyalty oaths were demanded, and 3 members of his council were exiled when their involvement was discovered. The amber-eyed vampire, who'd challenged her position that first day, was found to be the ringleader, along with 2 others who'd objected to a human consort holding such influence over their king. "They believed you made me weak," Orin told her one night as they lay together in his chambers. "Thought that without you, I'd return to being the cold, calculating ruler they preferred. They didn't understand that you make me stronger. Give me something to fight for beyond simple survival." What happened to them? Permanent death, publicly, as a warning to anyone else who might consider similar treachery. No apology in his voice. "I won't risk you, Fiona. Not for politics, not for tradition, not for anything." She should have been horrified by how easily he killed, should have been disturbed by the violence he was capable of. But all she felt was safe, protected, loved in a way that was fierce and absolute. "I've made my decision," she said quietly, "about what you asked me, about being turned." He went very still. "And?" "I want it. Not now, not yet. I want a few more years of being human, of experiencing the world through mortal eyes, but eventually, yes, I want forever with you." His arms tightened around her. "You're certain? Once it's done, there's no going back." "I'm certain." She looked up at him, letting him see the truth in her eyes. "I love you, Orin Castellan, and I want eternity by your side." He kissed her then, deep and desperate, and she felt the bond between them strengthen into something unbreakable. This was her choice, freely made, and she'd never regretted anything less. But fate, it seemed, had other plans. 3 months after the attack in the library, Fiona woke up feeling strange. Not sick, exactly, but off in a way she couldn't quite define. She mentioned it to Orin, who immediately insisted she see the court physician. The doctor was a vampire who'd been turned while practicing medicine in the 1800s, and she examined Fiona with thorough, professional efficiency. When she was done, her expression was carefully neutral. "You're not ill," she said slowly, "but there is something unusual in your blood work. The king's blood that you've been consuming through your bond, it's changed you more than we anticipated." "Changed me how?" "You're becoming something between human and vampire. Not turned, not fully transformed, but enhanced far beyond what we've seen before." She hesitated. "I've only read about cases like this in historical texts. If the process continues, you'll become something we call a dhampir. Half human, half vampire. Extremely rare and very powerful." Fiona's mind reeled. "How is that possible? I haven't been turned." "The repeated exchange of blood through intimate feeding, combined with the strength of your bond, it's triggering a transformation, slower than turning, but possibly just as complete." The doctor looked grave. "I need to inform the king immediately. He'll want to know about this." Orin's reaction when he heard the news was complicated. Concern warred with fascination on his face as he questioned the doctor about the process, the risks, the implications. "Is she in danger?" he demanded. "Unknown. The historical cases are incomplete. Some Dampirs thrived, others died during the transformation." The doctor met his gaze steadily. "I recommend we monitor her closely. If the process becomes dangerous, we can always complete the turning and make her fully vampire. That would stabilize her immediately." "Do it then. Turn her now before anything goes wrong." "No." Fiona's voice was firm. "I want to see what happens. I want to become what I'm meant to become naturally, not rush it because of fear." "You could die." Orin's hands gripped her shoulders. "I won't risk that. It's my risk to take." She covered his hands with hers. "Trust me. Trust my choice. If it gets dangerous, then we'll consider turning. But let me try this first." It took another hour of arguing, but eventually Orin agreed. He was clearly unhappy about it, his protective instincts screaming at him to eliminate any possible threat to her safety. But he respected her autonomy enough to let her make the choice. The transformation was gradual. Over the next several months, Fiona found herself growing stronger, faster, her senses sharpening to near vampire levels. She could see better in the dark, hear conversations rooms away, move with a grace and speed that startled even Orin. And slowly, gradually, she stopped needing to sleep as much, stopped feeling the pull of fatigue that had once plagued her human body, but she also retained her humanity. She could still walk in sunlight, though it made her uncomfortable after a while. Still ate human food and enjoyed the taste. Still had her heartbeat, her warmth, the life that made her fundamentally different from the vampires around her. She was becoming something new, something unique. "You're beautiful like this," Orin told her one evening as they stood together on a balcony overlooking the underground city. "Powerful and alive and mine. Is this permanent?" She looked down at her hands, marveling at the strength in them. "Or will I eventually complete the transformation and become fully vampire? The doctor doesn't know. You might stay like this indefinitely, or the change might continue until you're indistinguishable from us." He pulled her close. "Whatever happens, I'll be here. We'll figure it out together." But as the months passed, it became clear that the transformation had stabilized. Fiona was Dhampir, would remain Dhampir, a perfect bridge between the human and vampire worlds. And with that realization came a new purpose. "I want to help others," she told Orin one night. "Other humans who end up in our world, who are scared and confused like I was. I want to create a program to ease their transition, whether they choose to stay or return to the human world." He considered this carefully. "It would be controversial. Many vampires prefer to keep the worlds separate. But we don't have to. Think about it, how many humans stumble into vampire society accidentally. How many are hurt or killed because they don't understand the rules? If we could create a safe way to handle these encounters, we could prevent so much suffering. You want to change centuries of tradition? I want to make things better. Isn't that what a consort is supposed to do? Help their partner rule wisely?" A slow smile spread across his face. "You're going to turn my court upside down, aren't you?" "Probably. Is that a problem?" "Not even slightly." He kissed her, deep and thorough. "I love you, Fiona Mercer. And I love that you're not content to simply exist in my world. You want to shape it, improve it. You're everything I never knew I needed. I love you too, even when you're being an overprotective vampire king." "Especially then," he corrected with a grin. Over the next year, Fiona worked tirelessly to establish her program. With Orin's full support, she created safe houses in the human world where people who'd encountered vampires could go for help. She trained volunteers, both human and vampire, in how to handle these delicate situations. She wrote guidelines, established protocols, and slowly, gradually, began to change the way vampires and humans interacted. It wasn't easy. There was resistance from the more traditional factions, vampires who saw her innovations as weakness. But Orin backed her completely, and his support was absolute. Gradually, other vampire courts began to adopt her methods. Then, other supernatural communities took notice. Within 2 years, the program she'd started had spread across the globe. And through it all, her love for Orin only grew stronger. They were partners in every sense, equals, despite the differences in their natures. He ruled the vampires with iron authority, and she ruled beside him with compassion and wisdom. Together, they were reshaping their world. But there were still challenges. 4 years after that first night in the club, a new threat emerged. An ancient vampire from Europe, older and more powerful than Orin, arrived in New York claiming the throne should be his. His name was Constantine, and he was over 1,000 years old, his power immense. "He's within his rights to challenge me," Orin explained grimly, as they prepared for the formal confrontation. "He's old enough and strong enough that by vampire law, he can claim rule if he defeats me in combat." "Then don't fight him. Find another way." "There is no other way. If I refuse the challenge, I forfeit the throne automatically." His jaw was tight. "I have to fight, Fiona, and I have to win." "What happens if you lose?" "Then Constantine becomes king, and you become his prize. He's already made it clear he finds you fascinating. Claims he's never encountered a Dhampir before and would enjoy studying you extensively." Horror flooded through her. "You can't let him take me." "I won't." The promise in his voice was absolute. "I'll die before I let anyone take you from me." The challenge took place in the Great Hall, witnessed by every vampire in the court plus representatives from courts around the world. Constantine was terrifying, ancient power rolling off him in waves. He was taller than Orin, broader, his white hair falling to his waist and his eyes like chips of black ice. "You've ruled well, young one," Constantine said, his voice carrying easily through the hall. "But your attachment to that Dhampir has made you weak, distracted. The vampires deserve a king whose focus is absolute." "My focus is on protecting my people and my consort," Orin replied coldly. "That makes me strong, not weak." "Then prove it." Constantine's fangs descended. "Fight me, and we'll see who's worthy of the throne." The combat was brutal. They moved faster than most eyes could follow, two ancient predators tearing into each other with savage efficiency. Fiona watched in terror as Orin took hit after hit, his pale skin splitting and healing almost instantly. He was strong, skilled, powerful. But Constantine had centuries more experience, and it showed. Blood splattered the stone floor. Orin's blood, dark and too much of it. Fiona felt his pain through their bond, felt his determination, his love for her driving him forward even as his body took damage that should have been fatal. "Stay down," Constantine advised as Orin struggled to his feet for the 5th time. "You've fought well. No shame in yielding to a superior opponent. Never." Orin spat blood. "She's mine. The throne is mine, and you'll have to kill me to take either." "As you wish." Constantine lunged, moving impossibly fast, his hand aimed for Orin's heart. Fiona screamed, the sound tearing from her throat, and in that moment, something inside her broke free. Power flooded through her, power she'd never felt before. The Dhampir abilities she'd been developing suddenly crystallized into something more. She moved without thinking, faster than she'd ever moved. And suddenly she was between Orin and Constantine, her hand raised. Light exploded from her palm, pure and searing. Constantine screamed, stumbling back, his ancient flesh smoking where the light had touched him. "What?" He stared at her in shock. "That's impossible. Dhampirs can't." "This one can." Fiona's voice was steady despite her racing heart. "And if you ever try to hurt him again, I'll do worse than burn you. I'll end you." The threat was absurd. She was nothing compared to Constantine's power. But something in her voice, in the way the light still played around her fingers, made the ancient vampire pause. "Interesting." He straightened slowly, his wounds already healing. "Very interesting indeed. Perhaps your king has been hiding more than we knew." "The challenge is over," Orin said, moving to stand beside Fiona. "You failed to defeat me before my consort intervened. By vampire law, that counts as my victory." "Technically true." Constantine's eyes never left Fiona. "Though I could argue she violated the terms of single combat." "Then argue it to the council. See how far you get." Orin's arm went around Fiona's waist. "She's my mate. She has every right to protect me, just as I have every right to protect her. Or do you wish to challenge that as well?" For a long moment, tension hung in the air. Then Constantine laughed, the sound echoing through the silent hall. "No, I think not. A king with a Dhampir mate who can channel daylight that's more interesting than another throne." He bowed mockingly. "Keep your crown, Orin Castellan, and your fascinating consort. I withdraw my challenge." The hall erupted in whispers. But Fiona barely heard them. Her legs were shaking, the power that had filled her draining away as quickly as it had come. Orin caught her as she swayed, lifting her into his arms. "I've got you," he murmured. "You're safe. We're both safe." What did I just do? Something impossible. Wonder colored his voice. Something I've never seen in my 5 centuries. You channeled sunlight, Fiona. Pure daylight magic, the one thing vampires can't defend against. How? I don't know. I just couldn't let him hurt you. And then there was this power, and she looked up at him, fear and awe warring in her chest. Am I a freak? You're a miracle. He kissed her forehead. My miracle. And apparently more powerful than anyone, including you, realized. Over the next few weeks, they worked with scholars and magic users to understand what Fiona had done. The conclusion was unprecedented. Her hybrid nature, combined with her bond with Orin and her own latent magical abilities, had given her power over light itself. She could channel sunlight, manipulate it, use it as a weapon. She was the first of her kind, a dhampir with magic that could kill vampires. "This changes everything," one of the council members said during a meeting. "With her at your side, my king, no vampire in the world would dare challenge you." "She's not a weapon," Orin said coldly. "She's my consort, my partner, and she'll use her abilities as she sees fit, not as we command." Fiona squeezed his hand gratefully. "I don't want to hurt anyone. I just want to protect those I love." "Then that's what you'll do." Orin looked around the council chamber. "Is there anyone here who has a problem with that?" Silence. Not a single vampire spoke up. "Good." Orin stood, pulling Fiona up with him. "Then this meeting is adjourned, and the next person who refers to my consort as a weapon will be choosing their replacement from a pile of ash." Later, in the privacy of their chambers, Orin held her close. "Are you all right? Today was a lot." "I'm okay." She curled against him, absorbing his cold comfort. "Scared, but okay. I keep thinking about what almost happened. If I hadn't been able to stop Constantine. But you did. You saved me, Fiona, my powerful, incredible mate." His hand stroked through her hair. "Though it does raise a question." "What question?" "Our bond is obviously even stronger than we thought, strong enough to trigger abilities that shouldn't be possible." He pulled back to look at her. "I know you wanted to wait, to have a few more years of mortality before turning. But after today, I don't need to be turned." The realization settled over her with quiet certainty. "I'm already powerful, already connected to you in every way that matters. The dhampir transformation was what I was meant to become. Not human, not vampire, but something perfectly in between." "You're sure?" "Completely." She reached up to cup his face. "This is who I am, Orin, your dhampir mate, the bridge between our worlds, the light to your darkness. It's perfect exactly as it is." He kissed her, deep and thorough, and she felt the bond between them settle into something unshakable. They were mates in the truest sense, partners balanced perfectly between two worlds. 5 years after that first night in the club, Fiona stood on a balcony overlooking the court of endless night and marveled at how much her life had changed. She'd started as a simple college student, and now she was consort to the Vampire King, a powerful dhampir in her own right, respected and even feared by vampires across the globe. Her program to help humans transition into supernatural knowledge had expanded beyond her wildest dreams. Safe houses existed in every major city. Trained counselors helped people process what they'd learned. Some humans chose to return to their normal lives, their memories gently altered to protect the secret. Others chose to stay, becoming part of the vampire world in various capacities. A few, like her, found mates and chose transformation. She'd changed the world, just a little, made it safer, kinder, more understanding, and she'd done it all with Orin by her side. "There you are!" His arms came around her from behind, pulling her back against his chest. "I've been looking for you. Just thinking." "About?" "About how 5 years ago I thought one night with a beautiful stranger would be a fun story to tell my friends." She leaned into him. "I had no idea it would change my entire life." "Regrets?" "Not a single one." She turned in his arms to face him. "You gave me everything I never knew I wanted. Adventure, purpose, love that consumes me. How could I regret that?" Even though that one night meant nothing at the time, his lips curved in a slight smile. "Just a moment's pleasure, quickly forgotten." That's what I thought then. But you hunted for me, didn't you? Searched for 5 years through your bond, trying to understand what I was, trying to find me again. His expression went serious. I tried to forget you, tried to move on, to dismiss what I'd felt as a temporary fascination. But your taste, your scent, the memory of your blood had haunted me. I sent people to search the city to find any trace of the woman who'd disappeared from that club, but you'd vanished so completely, like you'd never existed. I went back to my normal life, graduated, got a better job, moved to a different neighborhood. She reached up to touch his face. I thought about you sometimes. That beautiful man with white hair who'd given me the most intense night of my life. But I convinced myself it was just a dream. Too perfect to be real. And then I found you again, 5 years later, purely by chance, walking past my building on your way to meet friends. His hands tightened on her waist. I saw you through the window, and every instinct I have screamed at me to go after you, to claim you, to never let you go again. So you followed me. So I followed you. Watched you for weeks, trying to decide if approaching you would be wise or catastrophically foolish. He pressed his forehead to hers. But I couldn't stay away. That one night had meant nothing at the time, but somewhere over 5 years of searching, it had become everything. Fiona's heart swelled. She'd known pieces of this story, but never the full scope of his dedication, never realized how thoroughly she'd captured him from that very first taste. I'm glad you followed me, she whispered. Glad you couldn't let go. Because this life with you, this strange and wonderful existence, it's more than I ever dreamed possible. You're more than I ever dreamed possible. He kissed her, soft and sweet and full of promise. My Dhampir queen, my light in the darkness, my reason for continuing when centuries of existence had left me hollow. Your queen? If you'll have me. He pulled back and there was vulnerability in his silver eyes. I know we've talked about our bond, about being mates, but I want to make it official. I want to give you the title and recognition you deserve. Fiona Mercer, will you marry me? Will you become my queen, in fact, as well as heart? Tears pricked her eyes. Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes. He produced a ring from seemingly nowhere, slipping it onto her finger. The stone was unusual, some kind of dark gem that seemed to hold light within its depths. It's vampire crystal, he explained, formed from the compressed ash of my ancestors, set in silver, blessed by moonlight, a symbol of my lineage, my power, my eternal commitment. You're mine now, Fiona, and I'm yours, forever. She kissed him through her tears, joy flooding through their bond. This was real. This was forever. A human college student and a vampire king, brought together by one night that meant nothing and then meant everything. The wedding was held a month later, a grand affair that brought vampires from across the globe. Fiona wore a gown of midnight blue that made her look like she was carved from starlight, and Orin wore traditional vampire royal regalia, all black fabric and silver embroidery that marked him as a king. They spoke their vows before the entire court, pledging themselves to each other for as long as they both existed. And when Orin kissed his new queen, the assembled vampires erupted in approval that echoed through the underground halls. Afterward, at the reception, Constantine approached them with a slight bow. Congratulations, my king, my queen. You've built something remarkable here, a court that accepts change, a love that transcends the boundaries of species. I admit I was skeptical when I first arrived, but you've proven me wrong. Thank you, Fiona said graciously. That means a lot coming from someone of your standing. Take care of each other. Constantine's black eyes were surprisingly warm. Love like yours is rare, even among vampires. Treasure it. They did. Over the years that followed, their bond only grew stronger. Fiona's powers as a Dhampir continued to develop, and she became known as the Day Queen, feared and respected in equal measure. But she never forgot her humanity, never lost the compassion that made her who she was. She and Orin ruled together, partners in every sense. They navigated political challenges, defended against threats, and slowly, gradually, changed the vampire world for the better. Under their rule, the Court of Endless Night became known as a place of justice and mercy, where old traditions were honored but not allowed to prevent progress. They traveled the world together, visiting other courts, establishing diplomatic relations with other supernatural communities. They built alliances that had never existed before, created networks of cooperation between species that had once been enemies. And through it all, they loved each other with an intensity that never faded. Every night, Orin would find Fiona and pull her close, marveling that this incredible woman had chosen him. Every day, Fiona would feel their bond pulse with life and be grateful for the chance encounter that had changed everything. 10 years after that first night, they stood together on a rooftop in New York City, watching the sunset over the skyline. Fiona could stand in the dying light without discomfort, her Dhampir nature allowing her to experience beauty that Orin could only watch from the shadows. "I wish you could see this," she said softly. "The way the light turns everything gold." "I see it in your eyes." He pulled her back against him. "And that's more beautiful than any sunset." She turned to face him, taking in his pale perfection, the silver eyes that saw straight into her soul. "Do you ever regret it? Taking me that night? All the complications I've brought into your life?" "Never. Not for a single moment." His hand cupped her face. "You're the best thing that's happened to me in 500 years. That one night that should have meant nothing became the beginning of everything. How could I regret that? I love you." Simple words, but weighted with everything she felt. Forever isn't long enough. Then it's a good thing we have eternity. He kissed her as the last rays of sunlight faded and the city lights began to twinkle to life below them. "My queen, my love, my Fiona." And as the night embraced them, Fiona knew with absolute certainty that she was exactly where she belonged, in the arms of the vampire king who'd hunted for her across 5 years, who'd claimed her as his mate, who loved her with an intensity that defied logic and reason. Their story had started with one night that meant nothing, but it had become a love story for the ages, proof that sometimes the most unlikely connections were the ones that changed everything. Together, they would face eternity, and she couldn't wait to see what came next.